Hi, I'm Tom, you're watching Sony 365, and if you're thinking about maybe buying a 5 Mark III, this is definitely the video for you, because we're going to look at the good, the bad, I'll give you my verdict, and then I'm going to answer all the questions that you've sent into me here, so you know exactly what you're dealing with this device. Let's kick things off with the good. So for me, one of the best things here is that price saving over the 1 Mark III. It's $300 or pounds or euros, depending on where you live, and that's a substantial saving, and I think that's a really nice, healthy starting point here. The question is though, do you get that same performance, that raw speed that you get in the 1 Mark III? Well, you absolutely do, because, well, it's got the same Snapdragon 888, but it even feels quicker than that somehow. And it's an illusion, because technically it isn't faster. It's just it feels that way because it's a smaller device, everything's closer to hand, and the haptics are particularly strong here. So yeah, it feels as quick as anything on the planet. And it is really, regardless of how much money you want to spend, it doesn't really get quicker than this. And I love that. It's rapid. So the next thing, of course, is, is it nice and pocketable? And the answer is yes. Could it be more pocketable? Could it be slightly smaller than its 6.1 inches? Yes, it could. And some would argue that would bring it more into line with the previous kind of compact promise that we've had from Sony with the compact models of old, which were very, very cool. But it's still a more pocketable version of the 1 Mark III in that sense. So yeah, it's a win there for me too. It's a good size, this. With that 21:9 form factor, it feels smaller than it actually is. And yeah, it's very cool. So the next thing then is the display, and it's a beautiful, beautiful HDR OLED display. It's not 4K. That would be overkill. I'm convinced of that. A lot of people say that 4K is overkill on the 6.5 inch bigger brother there, the 1 Mark III. And maybe there's something in that, but I mean, either way, it is absolutely beautiful, that 1 Mark III display, but you don't feel like you're missing anything beyond it just being a bit smaller here with the 5 Mark III. So yeah, the display is a win. It's very, very absorbing. It's a wonderful display for the size. Now I'm really, really chuffed with the battery life that I'm getting here. It's way past 6 hours. You can go even way further than that even if you want to with a few tweaks, but the central point here is, yes, the battery life is better than its bigger brother, the 1 Mark III, but it's also so good, in fact, that you'll just never ever have battery anxiety. And when I say never ever, I mean, we know that Sony looks after the battery very well for the long term with its battery care. So yeah, you'll just never have battery anxiety with this phone, and it will always be rapid with that chipset. So I mean, this is a very good starting point indeed. So the other cool stuff here is just cool stuff that we get on these flagship Xperias, in general, whether you choose the 1 Mark III or the 5 Mark III, namely that fantastic alpha inspired camera tech that we love if you want to get into photography and videography and really improve your skills, understand what you're doing and learn more, improve yourself as a photographer or videographer. Yeah, this is more fun than any other phone on the market outside of the Xperia lineup, and yeah, very, very cool there. The notification light makes this, I just like having a notification light. I love having a headphone jack, removable storage. Again, these are the things that you don't see on flagships really, generally speaking, outside of these flagship Xperias. So yeah, that's really healthy stuff. This is a very, very cool phone to live with, but it isn't perfect. So here's the bad stuff now. For me, it doesn't feel like it's made the same kind of distance over last year's model as the 1 Mark III has. We've got the same design basically as the 5 Mark II from last year. Got those same rounded edges, the same bezels, it's the same glossy finish. We don't get that beautiful matte finish that we get on the 1 Mark III. We don't get those beautiful, very Xperia kind of squared off edges there that just look the business. We don't get that, and I think that's really unfortunate, because if we did have that, it truly would feel like this was the more compact version of the super premium 1 Mark III, but we're kind of moving away from that here more than ever before, and I think that's unfortunate, and I hope that the gap is never this big again between the compact version and the bigger version. So yeah, it doesn't feel as premium as the 1 Mark III. That is a fact as far as my opinion is concerned. It's not a fact, but anyway, that's how I feel. The other thing is that the speakers aren't improved in any meaningful way over last year. That's a shame. Of course, they have been on the One Mark III. That's a missed opportunity, I think. It's just nice to see that improve. Wireless charging, again, just like last year, it's still not there. And I think for a lot of people, that's a deal breaker at this price point. I'm not too worried about it, but I feel that Sony would be able to shift more of these if it did have wireless charging. You do get a 30-watt fast charger in the box. It does give you 50% charge in just half an hour. That's cool. But not having wireless charging, yeah, that's a pity actually. So the other thing, of course, is we do have that wonderful alpha camera tech here. It's the same as the One Mark III, generally speaking, but it's missing the time of flight sensor. Is that a big deal? No, I've said this before. I don't think it is, because sure, they're useful in getting that depth of field information. It can help with things like the bokeh effect and so on, but that was never super strong. Well, it's not super strong on smartphones, generally speaking, and it hasn't been super strong with the One Mark III, anyway. So I don't feel that's a massive problem. It really isn't. I mean, some people will insist that that's a big omission. If you feel that way, then obviously the One Mark III is going to be your guy, but it doesn't worry me at all, that. On the front here though, that front facing camera, yeah, it's the same basic setup there as you're going to get on the One Mark III. It's okay, nothing better than that. But again, just as with the One Mark III, I want the front facing cameras to be better. Hopefully next year they will be. I'm sure they will be actually. I'd put money on it. So on the negatives, these are kind of the same here now as the One Mark III in terms of there isn't clear information from Sony in terms of how many years. I mean, we're looking at about 3 years of support, in terms of updates and 2 OS upgrades from now. And, I'd like to see that improved, and I want just absolutely crystal clear information from Sony given to all of us so we know exactly what we're dealing with here. As I've said before with the One Mark III, it wasn't that long ago that Samsung were terrible in terms of updates and upgrades, but now they're just absolutely great in the Android space, and I want Sony to be there too because they have the hardware to back that up. So fingers crossed that'll happen. There is a little bit of bloatware. I actually forgot to mention this in my last One Mark III video. Things like, Call of Duty, if you're not a gamer, I mean, this phone's incredible for gaming, but if you're not a gamer and you don't want to see that there, you can never actually get rid of it. There are a few things like that. Yeah, that is unfortunate. It'd be nice to just get rid of everything that you want to without any hassle whatsoever. The other thing is that the Google Assistant button can't be remapped depending on what territory you live in. I've seen varying reports on that, but it should be, and I think hopefully it will be in a future update if it isn't already, but that again would make it easier to live with if you just want to have that do something different, and I wouldn't blame you if you did. So the other thing is that those wonderful Sony apps like the Gallery app, which was a favourite, again it's never made a comeback here. It didn't with the bigger brother and it hasn't here either, so yes, you'll have to find something else. Oh, here's another one for you, the torch. I always forget to say this for some reason. I almost never use the torch on my phone, but if you do, for whatever reason, you need to know that just as with its bigger brother, the torch is very lackluster. So I'm just trying to think of everything bad that I can about this because it's important to get all the information across. I can't think of anything else. 2 weeks is a pretty good time to really get into a device, and it's been a little bit more actually. But yeah, you've got nothing to worry about if those things don't bother you. So here's my verdict then. It basically delivers on its promise, the 5 Mark III, in the sense that it does give you that sheer oomph that you get with the flagship, all the performance, wonderful stuff that there is to love, but in a smaller package, except that truly premium look and feel. It isn't there. It's an improvement over last year's model, but not as much of an improvement as I was hoping for. So there is a very strong case here for having a very good look at the 5 Mark II. And if there's a super duper deal on that, that could be the way to go. Equally, I would consider looking at the 1 Mark II from last year, because that's going to be in a similar kind of price point. And, sure, you don't get the brand new chipset, but you get that bigger 4K display. And I mean, I've lived with the 1 Mark II for over a year and I absolutely love it. So have a serious think about that. If you're coming from a device older than the 5, yeah, sure, this is the best compact, you know, flagship from Sony right now, and it's a cracking device, very, very cool. But I would say if you can possibly wait until next year, there's a really strong case for that too. Okay, let's look at these questions. Now, one of them here is, which do I personally prefer, the 1 Mark III or the 5 Mark III? I prefer the 1 Mark III, there's no question about it. This really is only for people who want that compact version and they just don't want a big device. That's you, then fine, this is going to do it. But for me, I don't mind having that bigger device, especially because of the 21:9 form factor. So yeah, for me, hands down, it's the 1 Mark III, not the 5 Mark III. How does it compare with the Pixel 4 in terms of the size there? Well, the Pixel 4 is shorter and wider. They both feel great in the hand. They're both, I would say they're both compact devices, just slightly different ways of doing things there with the aspect ratio. But if you're happy with a Pixel 4 in terms of the size, you're going to be happy with this. It's a bit narrower. Is the screen brightness an issue outdoors? It's the same across the board with the Xperias here. Even though the 1 Mark III has improved more than the 5 Mark III this year in terms of screen brightness, even the 1 Mark III isn't what you'd call bright outdoors in bright sunshine. It's just enough still to get you by, but there's no luxury there. It's not like you can see everything in beautiful, vivid detail. It just about gets you through. The flip side of that, of course, is I don't know of anyone with any of these phones that's had screen burn-in issues. They're very, very rare. So, I mean, there's two sides to that coin, but yes, it's not super bright. Is dynamic vibration good on the 5 Mark III? It is actually, yes. It's very, very good. It's actually one of those things that kind of caught me by surprise, because I suppose the whole device fits in the hands so much more easily. It's sort of, it feels punchier than perhaps it really is. But yeah, whenever I'm watching movies and so on Netflix, I always use that feature. I thought it would be maybe a gimmick and I'd get out of the habit of using it, but I always use it. It's very, very cool. So yeah, that's a win. Are wired headphones louder than wireless with the 5 Mark III? They are, but I feel bad saying it, because although it's true, I don't want anyone to crank up the volume too loud for too long. I think they put those limits in there for a reason, so do be careful there pumping really loud music into your lug holes. But yes, it does get louder, to answer your question, if you have the wired headphones. And I think all the other questions I've answered in the review. If I've missed anything, or if you have a new question, put it in the comments section below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this useful. I'll see you next time. Cheers.